In this segment, I'm going to go through a notebook that uses a Google Translator, and I'll show you how I created this workbook, this notebook, I should say. And I'll also show you in the process how you can import using pip installs into Colab. So this notebook, as you can see, has a header, it has some colors, it has a little code representation, and it has bullet points, etc. So in order to create something like this, for example, the colors, I use markdown language here. You might recall that these two stars is a bold. This is a header 1 or H1, equivalent to HTML H1. Also, you can also insert pieces of HTML here. For example, in order to create a red color here, I put a little HTML font color tag. And you can't do this directly in Markdown, but you can use these HTML tags in order to accomplish that. So you can see that turns it into red. Again, you might recall that the tilde sign before and after creates a representation of something that looks like code. I also have a few links here where you can go and get some information. The one what I want to do right now is I want to click this. This is a Python Google translation library you can take advantage of that is free. And when you go and install some of these libraries, this make it very easy. This is what you need to do in order for this to happen. So you click here to copy it. And back in your workbook, you simply paste that stuff. So I wrote a little piece about what this one does. It's using the Google Translate API to translate. And in order to activate this, you need, in the Colab, you can't just use pip install, but you have to put this bang sign in front of it. So it become bang pip install Google Trans. There's also a couple of other things I do in this notebook, the libraries I use. So I install those as well. It's probably a good idea to install everything up top here. And as you can see here, there is a Beautiful Soup 4, which is a library for HTML, reading HTML. And there's also a Request, which is used for connecting to internet or URLs sites to get requests from them. So the first thing I want to do here is, because I've been running this before, is simply to clear all the output. So in order to clean out everything here, what I want to do is I want to go to this runtime, change the runtime type, and notice it sits at none. There is also an option for GPU and TPU, which is important if you're going to have a deep learning project. You might want to set this to a GPU to set up your processing speed. A TPU is a Google-specific type. It stands for Tensor Processing Unit, and it's specifically meant for deep learning executions. So for now, I want to use the CPU. I don't need the GPU for this. So in order to reset this, I'm just going to choose it, save it, and go again and set it back into a CPU. That way I get a clean start. So I do that. The second thing I want to do is I want to clean out any output that I have from cells that I earlier ran. So I'm going to clear all outputs like this. Okay, so now I'm ready to start installing. So the first thing I want to do now is install these libraries, these Python libraries. So I'll click this, run cell, and what will happen is it will go out, grab what it needs, and it will start populating below here. It will tell you if you already have this loaded in or not. So these Colab notebooks comes with a lot of pre-installed libraries already. Some of the more common deep learning libraries already installed, like TensorFlow, FastAI, etc. But in our case, we're more interested in this Google Trans library. So now it's done. I can get rid of this stuff so I don't have to look at it. Once you install these libraries, you need to get access to the code that is within these libraries. So specifically from this Google Trans library, I want to import this functionality for the translator. So here I'm either importing some of the more common libraries in Python, like pandas, which creates data frame, very equivalent to an Excel workbook where you have rows and columns. You can manipulate rows and columns with this panda. There's also a numbers library here that comes with Python, very commonly used, called NumPy. It's often very good practice because a lot of people who works with this, they always call it the same thing. So when you see it in code, you recognize it right away. So NP is one that you often see by NumPy, and PD for pandas. So it's very commonly used. So you should probably get used to using the same thing. There's also a time. I'm not going to be using that. But there's also some helper things that helps me print out stuff. One of them is called tabulate. So I'm going to run this. I'm done there. Then I want to create an instance of the translator object. So I do that here. And what we can do with this translator, the languages that are supported, you can look at them here by clicking on that link. And you can see these are all the languages on this left-hand side. There's also something called ISO 639-1 codes. And there's abbreviation for each language, a 2-letter abbreviation, but some of them have more than 2. For example, simplified Chinese is ZH-CN, and traditional Chinese is ZH-TW. So from this page, you should be able to get the country code you're interested in. So that's what that does. If you want to look at the ISO standard, you can go here, and you can see here's all kinds of information about that. All right, so let's try to use this thing. So first thing I want to do is I want to translate from. So the way it works is I have a variable. I create a variable. I set it equal to the translator instance that I created up here, and then I'm using the translate functionality. This SRC is the source language. I'm going to set it as English. I'm going to set the destination language to DE, which is German. And then I have an English sentence I want to translate, and then I want to print the output. So when I run this, you can see source, destination language. The text is Guten Morgen, wie geht es Ihnen, which seems a pretty good translation to me. So that's how you can translate from English to German by explicitly telling the translator to do it that way. So here we got some other languages like Spanish. Okay, buenos dias, ¿cómo está? That looks pretty good to me. You have English to French. I'm sorry, you don't have English to French. It's English to English. And the reason that happened is because if you don't specify what you want to do here, it will just use the defaults. In order for me to make it French here, I will have to say the destination should be French. So let me see if it works now. Okay, that looks better. Bonjour, comment vas-tu? Okay, so I can also do a few more here very quickly. So, for example, a slightly longer sentence. I want a destination to be Norwegian. So, Shift-Enter, run it. Okay, it says, God morgen, hvordan har du det? Jeg skal en tur, vil du være med meg? Pretty good translation. This one does not look too good. It's missing a word. It should say på into, but otherwise it's pretty good. So that I'll probably be able to use that sentence if I needed to. A couple of more, slightly different languages. Here is from English to Hindi. As you can see, I don't read Hindi, so whoever watches this that knows Hindi should be able to verify this. I'm not sure what it says, but again, we can go from Hindi to Norwegian. When you go from a non-English language to another, you have to specify the source and destination. It will often try to interpret whatever the sentence is here. It will probably detect that this is Hindi, but the destination, if you don't specify, will be English. So here you can see if you take whatever you created up here and bring it back to English, this is what it produces, and it looks kind of correct to me. So a couple of more. Here's some Norwegian to Hindi, as you can see. You can do some Chinese, and remember, you 2-letter for the simplified Chinese. You have 2 letters, was a CN-CN. For traditional Chinese, it's TW, and you can see this is what it looks like. Slightly different symbols towards the end here versus here. Now, I'm not sure what it means, so somebody who knows can probably check this out. English to Danish, we can do that. God morgen, jeg på vei til arbejde. Kaffen klar? Kind of strange. Anyways, so it's a couple of more things here. Another thing that is important is to check bulk translation, which is what we're going to talk about next.